In the days when the shadows of the Fourth Age grew long across Middle-earth, when the last echoes of the War of the Ring had faded to whispered tale, there came a stirring in the depths of Minas Tirith that would shake the very foundations of Arda. King Elisar had ruled justly for nigh on 60 years, and peace had settled upon the lands like morning dew upon the mallorn leaves of distant Lothlorien. Yet, in the highest tower of the White City, where the Palantir of Minas Tirith rested in its chamber of black marble, something unprecedented occurred. The Seeing Stone, which had remained dark and silent since the fall of Sauron, suddenly blazed with ethereal fire. The light was neither the malevolent red of Barad-dûr nor the pale wisdom of the Eldar, but something altogether ancient and strange. Faramir, Prince of Ithilien and Steward of Gondor, was the first to witness this marvel. He had come to the tower chamber, as was his custom each fortnight, to ensure the Palantir remained secure and untouched. But as his footsteps echoed in the vaulted stone corridor, he beheld a radiance spilling beneath the great iron door, bright as starlight upon snow. "By the Valar," he whispered, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of his sword. Within the chamber, the Palantir pulsed with rhythmic light, and images swirled within its crystalline depths like storm clouds gathering before the tempest. Faramir saw visions that chilled his heart, a figure cloaked in twilight, standing upon the ruins of Weathertop, stars falling like tears from the heavens, and beneath the roots of the mountains, something vast and terrible stirring in the deep places of the world. But most disturbing of all was the voice that spoke from the stone, not in the black speech of Mordor, but in the pure tones of Quenya, the high elven tongue. "Arundil's light grows dim," the voice intoned, "and the music approaches its final movement. Seek ye the threshold of stars, ere the last melody fades, and silence claims Arda forever." The vision faded as suddenly as it had come, leaving Faramir alone in the darkness, his heart heavy with foreboding. He knew that such tidings could not be borne by him alone. With swift steps, he descended the tower and dispatched riders upon the swiftest horses in the realm. Messages flew to Rivendell, to the Grey Haven, and to Edoras in Rohan. The fellowship that had once saved Middle-earth must be summoned anew. 7 days passed ere the great ones of Middle-earth could gather in the halls of Minas Tirith. Gimli the dwarf arrived first, his beard now silver as mithril, but his axe still keen. Behind him rode Legolas of the woodland realm, fair as ever, but with a distant sadness in his eyes that spoke of the longing for the undying lands. King Eomer of Rohan came with a company of his riders, and with him came Meriadoc Brandybuck and Peregrine Took, now grown to the full dignity of their years, but retaining still the brightness of hobbit kind. From Rivendell came Elrond's son, Elladan and Elrohir, bearing word from their father, who had at last taken ship to Valinor. But it was the arrival of Gandalf that brought the greatest comfort to those assembled. The White Wizard came as the sun set upon the 7th day, his staff gleaming with power undimmed, though he seemed more ethereal than before, as if he stood already with one foot in the blessed realm. "You have seen true," Gandalf said to Faramir when the prince recounted his vision. "The Palantir has shown you what my own sight has confirmed. There is yet one deed left undone in the shaping of Arda, one final chapter in the music of creation that must be written ere this world passes into memory." King Elisar, aged but still kingly in bearing, leaned forward upon his throne. "Speak plainly, Mithrandir. What is this threshold of stars, and what doom awaits if we cannot find it?" The wizard's gray eyes grew troubled. Long ago, when the world was young, and the Valar walked openly upon Middle-earth, Eru Ilúvatar wove into the music a final verse, a coda, if you will. It was meant to be sung only when the dominion of men was fully established, and the elder days were truly ended. This verse would complete the symphony of creation and prepare Arda for its final transformation. "And if it remains unsung?" asked Elrohir. "Then the music itself will begin to unravel," Gandalf replied grimly. "The very foundations of reality will weaken, The barriers between the seen and unseen will fail, and creatures of shadow that even Morgoth feared will find their way into our world. Arda will not pass gently into whatever lies beyond, but will tear itself apart in chaos and despair. A silence fell upon the council chamber, heavy as the silence that follows thunder. It was Gimli who spoke first, his gruff voice breaking the spell. Then we must find this threshold, wherever it may be hidden. The company that destroyed the ring can surely discover one hidden doorway, even if it leads to the ends of the earth. Nay, friend Gimli, said Gandalf sadly, this quest is not for the aged and the weary. Already I feel the pull of the Grey Havens growing stronger with each passing day. This task must fall to younger hearts and fresher strength. From the back of the chamber stepped a figure that few had noticed in the shadows, a young woman clad in the gray and green of a ranger, her dark hair bound back with a silver circlet. Upon her breast gleamed a star of Elendil, marking her as one of the Dunedain. I will go, she said simply. I am Morwen, daughter of Halbarad, who fell at the Pelennor fields. The blood of Númenor runs in my veins, and I have walked the wild paths of Eriador since childhood. If this threshold can be found, I shall find it. Beside her stood another, a young elf whose eyes held the light of the two trees. I am Cirith of the Grey Havens, he said. My master Círdan has sent me to offer what aid I may. The shipwright remembers much of the elder days, and he has given me lore that may prove needful in the days ahead. The quest company departed Minas Tirith as autumn painted the leaves of Ithilien in shades of gold and crimson. Besides Morwen and Cirith, 4 others had been chosen for the perilous journey. There was Boran, son of Balin, a dwarf lord of Erebor who bore his grandfather's wisdom and his father's courage in equal measure. From Rohan came Éowyn's nephew, Deorgar, a young rider whose skill with horse and spear was spoken of in songs throughout the Mark. The 2 hobbits of the company were perhaps the most unlikely. Tolman Cotton, son of farmer Cotton of Hobbit, whose lineage could be traced back to the days of the Shire's founding, and Goldilocks Took, daughter of the Tyne, whose adventurous spirit rivaled that of her kinsman, Peregrine. As they rode north through the realm of Gondor, Gandalf shared with them what lore he could recall of the Threshold of Stars. It is written in the secret books of Rivendell that when Arundel first sailed the skies bearing the Silmaril, he pierced a veil between the spheres of earth and heaven. That point of piercing became a gateway, the Threshold of Stars, through which the final music might be sung. Surely, said Cirith, Arundel sails still in the heavens above. How can we reach a star? The threshold is not among the stars themselves, Gandalf replied, but rather at the place where earth reaches closest to heaven. In the elder days, this was Tanicatil in Valinor, but since the changing of the world, the highest point accessible to mortal feet is Weathertop, Amon Sul, the Hill of Wind, Morwen's brow furrowed. Yet, the Palantir showed the figure on Weathertop's ruin, not the threshold itself. Perhaps the vision pointed not to the destination, but to the beginning of the path. Their journey north took them through fair lands growing wild again in the absence of men. The great cities and towns still thrived, but the empty spaces between grew wider with each passing year as folk drew closer together for comfort and community. On the borders of Rohan, they met with rangers who spoke of strange lights seen dancing above the ruins of Isengard, and shepherds told tales of voices singing in languages not heard since the world's youth. When they reached the borders of Eriador, the signs grew more disturbing. The trees themselves seemed restless, their branches swaying without wind, and the very stones hummed with an energy that set the teeth on edge. Wild animals fled southward in great migrations, as if sensing some approaching calamity. The fabric of the world grows thin here, murmured Cirith, his elven senses more acute than those of his companion. Can you not feel it? The boundary between what is and what might be grows weak. Indeed, as they drew closer to Weathertop, all the company began to sense a strange duality in the world around them. Sometimes they would glimpse, from the corner of their eyes, a land more fair than Middle-earth as it was, a vision of what it might have been, had the shadow never fallen. Other times, they saw a darker reflection, a realm of ash and ruin, where the very light seemed poison. On the night before they would reach the ancient watchtower, they made camp in a grove of birch trees that stood near the weathered remains of a way station from the days of Arda. As they kindled their fire and shared their evening meal, Morwen spoke of her fears. "I have read the old chronicles," she said quietly. "Many who have sought to meddle with the fundamental music of creation have been destroyed by forces beyond their comprehension. What if we are not strong enough for this task?" It was Tolman Cotton who answered, the hobbit's practical wisdom cutting through the gloom. "Well, Miss Morwen, my old gaffer used to say that the hardest work in the garden gets done not by those who think themselves strong enough, but by those who care enough to see it through. Seems to me the world's been a good enough home that it's worth trying to save, whether we're strong enough or not." Weathertop rose before them in the gray light of dawn, like a broken tooth against the sky. The ancient watchtower that had once crowned its summit lay in ruins still, a testament to the wars that had swept across Eriador in ages past. Yet, as the company climbed the steep, winding path that led to the top, they sensed that something more than memories dwelt among those fallen stones. Cirith halted suddenly, his hand upon his sword hilt. "We are observed," he whispered. "Something watches from the ruins above, but I cannot see what manner of being it might be." They proceeded with greater caution, weapons ready but not drawn, for Gandalf's final counsel had been clear. Not all watchers are enemy, and some guardians wear forms that might alarm the unwary. As they crested the final slope and stood among the tumbled blocks of the tower's foundation, the nature of their observers was revealed. 3 figures stood in the ruins, tall and ethereal, as if woven from starlight and shadow. They wore no raiment that mortal eyes could discern clearly, but seemed clothed in the very fabric of twilight. Their faces were fair but strange, neither elven nor human, and their eyes held depths like the space between stars. "We greet you, children of Ilúvatar," spoke the foremost of the 3, and its voice was like the distant music of the spheres. "Long have we waited for your coming. I am Astaldo, servant of Varda Elentari, and these are my companions, Sulimo and Nierme. We are the Watchers, set to guard this place until the threshold should be found." Morwen found her voice first among the company. "You are Maiar," she said with wonder, "servants of the Valor themselves. We are what you might call the last of our order to remain in Middle-earth," Astaldo replied. "When our kin departed over the sea, we 3 were bound by sacred duty to remain and watch for the signs foretold in the music. The time of the last prophecy has come at last." Sulimo stepped forward, and as it moved, phantom lights danced around its form like captured starfire. "The threshold of stars is not upon this hill, but beneath it. In the deep places where the roots of Amon Sul reach into the bones of the earth, there lies a chamber wrought in the elder days. Yet the way is barred by trials that only the worthy may pass." "What manner of trials?" asked Borin, his dwarf sense already probing the stone beneath their feet for hidden passages. Nirma, who had not yet spoken, answered in a voice like silver bells across water. "The trials are threefold. The trial of memory, wherein the seeker must witness the true history of Arda. The trial of sacrifice, wherein that which is most precious must be freely given. And the trial of song, wherein the seeker must add their voice to the music itself." The Maya gestured toward a section of the ruins where the stones in a peculiar pattern. "Here lies the entrance to the deep ways. Yet know this, only those who enter with pure intent and unwavering purpose may hope to pass the trials and reach the threshold. Many have sought it in ages past, and their bones line the passages below." Morwen looked to her companion, seeing in their faces the same mixture of fear and determination that filled her own heart. "We did not come this far to turn back now," she said firmly. "If the fate of all Arda hangs in the balance, then we must attempt what we may." Astaldo nodded gravely. "Then be prepared, for once you enter the hidden ways, there can be no retreat until the trials are complete, or you have joined the ranks of the fallen. The path leads only forward, to triumph or to doom. With that warning ringing in their ears, the company approached the pattern of stone. At Astaldo's direction, they pressed their hands to certain marks carved into the ancient masonry, and with a grinding that spoke of eons unused, the stones rolled aside to reveal a stairway descending into darkness. The passage into the depths of Weathertop was hewn from living rock, its walls smooth as glass and inscribed with runes that seemed to shift and change in the light of their torches. The air grew thicker as they descended, heavy with the weight of untold years and the pressure of the earth above. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the stone itself remembered every soul who had walked this way before. After what felt like hours of descent, they emerged into a vast chamber carved from a single enormous geode. The walls sparkled with embedded crystal that caught and reflected their torchlight, creating a constellation of stars within the earth. At the center of the chamber stood a pool of water so perfectly still, it might have been polished obsidian. The pool of memory, whispered Seereth, recognition dawning in his ancient eyes. I have heard of such things in the elder songs. It is said to show not what was perceived, but what truly was. As they approached the pool's edge, the water began to glow with an inner light, and images formed in its depths. But these were not the heroic tales told in the halls of men or elves. Instead, they witnessed the secret history of Arda, the parts of the music that had been hidden from mortal understanding. They saw Eru Iluvatar weaving the themes of creation, but now they perceived the discord that ran beneath even the most beautiful melody. They witnessed Melkor's rebellion not as simple malice, but as a necessary counterpoint that gave the music its depth and meaning. They saw the fall of Numenor not as a punishment, but as a pruning that allowed the music to continue. Most disturbing of all, they saw themselves, not as heroes on a noble quest, but as instruments in a larger symphony, their choices and sacrifices merely notes in a composition beyond their comprehension. Tolman Cotton gasped as he watched himself in the pool, seeing how every decision he had ever made, even the smallest choice of which path to take through the Shire, had been woven into the pattern that led him to this moment. "It's all been decided already," he whispered in horror. "We're not heroes at all. We're just playing out a tune that was written before the world began." But it was Goldilocks Took who provided the insight that allowed them to pass the first trial. "No," she said firmly, her hobbit sense cutting through the despair that threatened to overwhelm them. "Don't you see? The music needed us to choose to be here. If it was all decided beforehand, then the song would be hollow as an empty eggshell. The beauty is that we chose to be instruments in something greater than ourselves." As her words rang through the chamber, the visions in the pool changed. Now they saw the same events, but perceived the golden thread of genuine choice that ran through each moment. They witnessed how love and sacrifice, freely given, became the most beautiful notes in the great symphony. The trial was passed not through understanding the truth, but through accepting their place within it. A new passage opened at the far end of the chamber, and they moved forward into deeper darkness. The second chamber was smaller than the first, but no less wondrous. Its walls were covered in mirrors of polished mithril, each one reflecting not the viewer's physical form, but the shape of their spirit. Here, Morwen saw herself as a tree, with roots reaching deep into the earth of Middle-earth, and branches stretching toward distant stars. Borin appeared as a mountain, solid and enduring. The hobbits were reflected as flame, small but warm and bright. In the center of this chamber stood an altar of white stone, and upon it lay items that each member of the company recognized with a shock of recognition. For Morwen, there was the sword that had belonged to her father, Halbarad, the blade he had carried to his death at the Pelennor Fields. For Kirith, a crystal vial containing the last water from the fountain in Lothlorien, a gift from Galadriel herself. Each member of the company found upon the altar something precious beyond measure, Borin's crown of his inheritance, destined to make him king under the mountain, Deorgar's ancestral horn that had been blown by Helm Hammerhand himself, Tolman's seed pouch containing the last of the Malorn nuts given by the Lady of the Golden Wood to Sam Gamgee, and Goldilocks's mithril vest, sized for a hobbit lass and wrought by the craftsmen of Erebor as a token of eternal friendship between the Shire and the Lonely Mountain. A voice spoke from the air itself, neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. The path to the threshold requires a price. Each must choose, take what lies before you and go back the way you came, returning to a life of comfort and honor. Or cast your greatest treasure into the flame that burns beneath the altar and continue forward with no certainty, save that the path grows ever more perilous. The flame beneath the altar was indeed there, though they had not noticed it before. A flickering tongue of blue fire that seemed to consume nothing, yet hungered for everything. Tirith was the first to move. Without hesitation, he took the crystal vial and poured its contents into the flame. The water hissed and steamed, and for a moment, the very air shimmered with the memory of Lothlorien's beauty. "I came to see the threshold," he said simply. "I will not turn back for any treasure." One by one, the others followed. Borin cast his crown into the fire with a laugh. "A king serves his people, not his crown," he declared, "and all the peoples of Middle-earth have need of this service." Morwen's hand trembled as she held her father's sword. This blade had drunk orc blood in defense of Gondor, had stood against the Nazgul themselves, but she remembered her father's words on the night before he rode to war. "A blade serves its purpose only when wielded, daughter. A sword kept safe serves no one." Into the flame it went, and the fire flared white-hot for a moment before returning to its steady blue glow. When all had made their sacrifice, the mirrors began to sing, a harmony that seemed to emerge from the mithril itself. The sound was beyond beautiful. It was the music of surrender, of trust, of love that counts no cost too dear. And in that music, they began to understand something of what they sought to preserve. The final chamber was vast beyond measure, its ceiling lost in shadows that even their torches could not penetrate. But they had no need of light here, for the chamber itself glowed with a radiance that came from every surface. Walls and floor, and the very air pulsed with gentle luminescence that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of a vast, slow heartbeat. In the center of this space stood a structure that defied easy description. It might have been a pipe organ wrought from crystal and starlight, or perhaps a harp strung with threads of pure harmony. When they drew closer, they could see that it was both and neither, an instrument of music that existed partially in the physical world and partially in the realm of spirit. "The Ainulindala," breathed Tirith in wonder, the instrument upon which the music of creation itself was first played. 7 crystal keys or strings or pipes. The nature of the instrument seemed to shift, even as they watched, stood ready. But between the company and the instrument stretched a chasm that seemed to drop away into infinite depth. The only bridge was a span of what appeared to be crystallized music itself, notes and harmonies made visible and solid. Beside the bridge stood a lectern bearing an open book, its pages glowing with script that wrote itself even as they watched. The words were in Quenya, but all could read them as if they were written in their native tongues. Here the final verse awaits. Written at the world's birth, but never sung. 7 voices must speak as one. 7 hearts must beat in time. 7 souls must risk their own harmony to complete the symphony of all that is. But know this, to sing the last prophecy is to become part of it. Those who raise their voices here may find their earthly song is ended, their place henceforth among the stars that dance to music's final movement. The meaning was clear and terrible. To complete their quest might mean their deaths, or perhaps something beyond death, a transformation into something no longer entirely mortal. Morwen looked at her companion, seeing her own understanding reflected in their faces. "We came to save the world," she said quietly. "If the price is our lives, then so be it. But is it right?" asked Tolman, his practical hobbit sense asserting itself. "Should we choose for all Middle-earth without asking what they would want?" It was Deorgar who answered, his young voice carrying the weight of his lineage. "My Aunt Eowyn faced the Witch King not knowing if she would survive, but knowing that someone must stand between him and those she loved. This is no different. Goldilocks nodded firmly. Besides, what good is staying alive in a world that's falling apart? If we don't try, there might not be any world left to save. Borin hefted his axe, though there was nothing here for him to fight. My grandfather sought a treasure that would restore his people's honor. We seek to preserve all people's future. The choice is clear. Sireth's eyes were distant, already seeing perhaps to the undying lands. I have lived long, even for one of the Eldar. If my final song can preserve the world for those who come after, then it is a good death, or a good becoming. Together, they approached the bridge of crystallized music. As their feet touched its span, harmony surrounded them, supporting their weight not with solid matter, but with pure, solidified song. The crossing was harrowing, for the music beneath their feet was alive and responsive to their emotions. Whenever doubt or fear crept into their hearts, the bridge grew thin and unstable. Only by holding fast to their purpose and their love for Middle-earth could they maintain their footing. When they reached the Ainu Lindala, they found that 7 places had been prepared for them. Not seats, but positions where they could become part of the instrument itself. As each took their place, they felt the music of creation flowing through them, teaching them their part in the song to come. As the 7 companions took their positions around the Ainu Lindala, the instrument began to resonate with their present. Each member of the company found themselves connected to one aspect of the great harmony. Morwen to the melody of growing thing, Sireth to the harmonies of wind and sky, Borin to the deep bass notes of earth and stone, Deorgar to the rhythm of running water and galloping horses, Tolman to the gentle counterpoint of peaceful hearths and growing crops, and Goldilocks to the bright treble of laughter and joy. But as they prepared to sing, they realized that 7 were not enough. The final verse of the Ainu Lindala required 8 voices, 7 for the children of Iluvatar and 1 for the Creator himself. The instrument waited, incomplete and silent. It was then that the greatest shock of their quest was revealed. From the shadows at the edge of the chamber stepped a figure they had not expected. Samwise Gamgee, no longer the simple gardener of the Shire, but transformed by years of bearing the weight of a secret burden. "Sam!" cried Tolman and Goldilocks together, but the figure that faced them was both Sam and something more. His eyes held depths of wisdom that spoke of communion with powers beyond Middle-earth, and upon his brow gleamed a circlet of mithril and starlight. "Forgive me the deception," Sam said, his voice carrying new harmonics. "But some truths could not be spoken until this moment. When I bore the ring, even briefly, I was touched by the music itself. And when I sailed west with Frodo and the others, I did not go to the Undying Lands for rest, but to learn. Eru Iluvatar himself chose me to return and serve as the final voice in the last verse of creation." Morwen stared in wonder and growing understanding. The figure cloaked in twilight that the Palantir showed, it was you, standing upon Weathertop, waiting for us to find our way here. Sam nodded gravely. "I have watched over this place for 20 years, though time moves strangely in the deep chamber. The Valor taught me what I needed to know, and when the moment came, they sent me to guide you here, though you had to find your own way, as is proper for such a quest." Chai, he took his place at the center of the Ainu Lindala, and immediately the instrument came alive with power that made the chamber tremble. The walls rang like bells, and the very air began to sing in harmonies beyond mortal comprehension. "Now," Sam said, his gardener's practicality unchanged despite his transformation, "let's finish this work properly. The music's been waiting long enough for its ending." They began to sing the last prophecy of Arda, and their voices joined with the instrument to create sounds that had never been heard since the foundation of the world. The melody they sang was one of completion, of transformation, of endings that were also beginning. It spoke of the long twilight of Middle-earth coming to a close, but also of the new songs that would be born from its ending. As they sang, visions arose in the chamber around them. They saw Middle-earth itself beginning to change, not to fade or diminish, but to become something new and wonderful. The barriers between the seen and unseen grew thin, and the two realms began to merge into something that contained the best of both. The song they sang was unlike any music that had been heard in Middle-earth since its making. It was not merely melody and harmony, but the very force that shaped reality itself. As their voices rose together with the resonance of the Ainulindala, the chamber around them began to dissolve. Or perhaps it was they who were dissolving into the music. Through the walls of crystal and stone, they began to see all of Middle-earth spread out before them like a living map. From the Grey Havens to the Sea of Rune, from the Ice Bay of Foreshell to the fields of Far Harad, the world pulsed with new life as the last prophecy worked its transformation. In Minas Tirith, King Elisar felt the change first as a warmth in his heart, a lifting of a burden he had not known he carried. The city's white stones began to gleam with an inner light, not harsh, but welcoming, and the citizens looked up from their labors to find that their city had become more beautiful than it had been even in the days of its greatest glory. In Rohan, the Rohirrim felt their horses grow swifter and stronger, their manes catching light like spun gold. The grass of the Riddermark turned greener than emerald, and the songs of the Mark took on new harmonies that spoke of joy beyond measure. In the Shire, the hobbits found their gardens blooming as they had never bloomed before. Fruit trees bore their loads out of season. Flowers opened that had been extinct since the elder days, and the very earth hummed with fertility and life. Old Tolman Cotton, working in his garden when the change came, felt his aged back straighten and his hands grow steady as a young man. Even in the desolate lands of Mordor, green shoots began to pierce the ash-covered plain. The toxic pools began to clear, and where Barad-dûr had stood, a spring of pure water bubbled up from the earth. But the greatest change was in the people themselves. Throughout Middle-earth, the children of Ilúvatar found their senses sharpened and their perception expanded. Men could perceive the passing thoughts of trees, elves could hear the distant music of the stars, and dwarves found that stone spoke to them in clear voices of friendship and counsel. The borders between the kindreds began to blur in the best possible way. An elf of Rivendell could speak with a dwarf of Erebor and understand not just his words, but his heart. A man of Gondor could look upon a hobbit of the Shire and see clearly the strength and courage that had always dwelt there, but which had been hidden from grosser sight. "It is the healing," Sam said, as they continued to sing, his voice somehow audible above the celestial music. "All the hurts done to Arda since its making are being made whole. The discord that Melkor wove into the music is being resolved into the greater harmony. Yet as wonderful as these changes were, they came with a price that was becoming clear to the seven who sang. With each note of the last prophecy, they felt themselves becoming less solid, less tied to the physical world. They were being transformed into something new, not destroyed, but changed into living music would help sustain the new order they were creating. As the transformation deepened, each member of the company began to understand what their sacrifice truly meant. They were not dying in any mortal sense, but they were becoming something beyond mortality, threads woven permanently into the music of creation, their individual voices preserved, but now part of a greater symphony. Morwen felt her connection to the growing things of Middle-earth expand until she could sense every tree, every flower, every blade of grass across the continent. She became the voice that would sing to seeds in the earth, calling them to sprout, guiding their growth toward the light. Her consciousness remained her own, but it was also part of something vast and green and growing. Tirith found his elven perception of wind and sky expanding beyond all bound. He became the breath that would stir the leaves, the whisper that would guide the clouds, the gentle breeze that would carry the pollen of flowers, and the songs of birds to every corner of the renewed world. Borin's dwarven connection to stone and earth transformed him into the voice that would sing in the deep places, keeping the mountains strong, ensuring that the caves and tunnels would shelter those who needed refuge, and that the mines would yield their treasures fairly to those who worked them with honor. Deorgar became the spirit of all moving water, streams and rivers, rain and sea, the blood that flows in the veins of all living things. His was the voice that would call the salmon upstream and guide the ships to safe harbor. Tolman found himself becoming the guardian of all growing food, the spirit of agriculture and husbandry, who would whisper to farmers about when to plant and when to harvest, who would ensure that the earth would always provide enough for those who worked it with respect and gratitude. Goldilocks became the keeper of joy itself, the spark that would kindle laughter in children's hearts, inspire lovers to song, and remind all the peoples of Middle-earth that life is meant to be celebrated as well as preserved. And Sam, who had already been transformed by his communion with the Valor, became the conductor of this great orchestra of spirit. The gardener who would tend the renewed world and ensure that all the voices sang in harmony. "Don't grieve for us," Sam said, though his own voice now seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, woven into the fabric of reality itself. "We're not lost. We're found. We're becoming part of the song that will keep Middle-earth fair and free forever." But even as they underwent this transformation, a new threat emerged. The singing of the last prophecy had indeed awakened things in the deep places of the world, as Gandalf had warned, from chasms beneath the misty mountains, from caverns below the Sea of Nurnen, from wells of shadow in the far corners of the earth, came creatures that had slumbered since before the first rising of the sun. These were not orcs or trolls or any of the beings corrupted by Melkor's malice. These were the unnamed thing, primordial entities that existed in the spaces between the notes of the music, creatures of uncreation that sought to devour harmony itself and return all things to the void that preceded even Eru's first thought. The unnamed things rose from the depths with a hunger that had been building for ages uncounted. They were antithetical to existence itself, not evil in the way that Sauron had been evil, or even the Dark Lord had been part of the music, albeit a discordant part. These entities existed in the silences between the notes, in the gaps where the music faltered, and their very presence threatened to unravel the harmony that held Arda together. As they emerged into the renewed world, the light dimmed wherever they passed. Flowers withered not from malice, but from the simple absence of the life force that sustained them. The sweet waters turned bitter, and the songs in the hearts of the free peoples began to fade into melancholy and despair. In Minas Tirith, King Elisar felt the shadow fall across his realm like a cold wind from the void. The white stones of the city grew gray and dull, and a great weariness settled upon his people. "It is as if joy itself is being drained from the world," he said to Faramir, who had remained to guard the city while the company sought the threshold. In the deeps beneath Weathertop, the 7 guardians of the last prophecy found their song interrupted by discordant notes that seemed to come from the very foundations of the earth. The crystal chamber began to crack, and through the fissures seeped a darkness that was more than the absence of light. It was the presence of negation itself. "We cannot complete the song while these things assail the music," Sam realized, his transformed perception showing him the full scope of the threat. "They are trying to prevent the last prophecy from taking hold, to return Arda to the silence that came before the first word of creation." It was then that the second great revelation of their quest was made manifest. From the cracks in the chamber floor emerged not more unnamed things, but a figure that even Sam, in his transformed state, did not expect. It was Melkor himself, not as the terrible Morgoth he had become, but as he had been in the beginning. Melkor the Mighty among the Ainur, the most gifted of all Eru's servants. "Peace, gardener," said Melkor, and his voice held no malice, only infinite weariness. "I have not come to destroy, but to make amends for destruction. Long have I dwelt in the void beyond the circles of the world, and in that emptiness I have learned what my pride once blinded me to see." The 7 companions stared in amazement as Melkor, tall and fair as he had been before his fall, clothed in robes of deep blue scattered with stars, took up a position at the Ainu Lindala, where Sam had been the 8th voice to complete the harmony. Melkor would be the 9th, the voice of redemption, that would bind even discord into the greater pattern. "The unnamed things are drawn to my presence," Melkor explained as he placed his hands upon the instrument. "They are the notes I struck in the beginning when I tried to disrupt my father's music. I alone can call them back to the silence from which they came, but only if I sing my part in the true harmony at last." Sireth, even in his transformed state, felt doubt and fear. "How can we trust you? You are the source of all the woe that has befallen Arda." Melkor's eyes, bright as stars before the sun and moon were made, looked upon them with a sorrow that encompassed ages. "Because, young elf, I have learned that even the greatest discord can serve the greater harmony. If the singer has the wisdom to weave it properly into the song, I have been given one chance to transform my rebellion into something beautiful, to make of my fall a grace note that will enhance rather than destroy the music." With Melkor taking his place as the ninth voice in the Symphony of Renewal, the last prophecy began again, but now with a depth and complexity that dwarfed even their previous attempt. The redeemed Vala sang the parts that he had once sought to corrupt, transforming discord into harmony, making of his ancient rebellion a counterpoint that enhanced rather than destroyed the greater theme. As his voice joined theirs, the unnamed things that had risen from the depths began to sing as well. Not the harsh notes of negation they had embodied, but the pure tones of their original nature before Melkor's first discord had awakened them. They were revealed to be not creatures of evil, but the rests and pauses in the music that were as necessary as the notes themselves. The transformation of Middle-earth accelerated beyond all previous bounds. Where before the changes had been gentle and gradual, now they came like a great wave of renewal that swept across all the land. The very substance of Arda began to shift, not into something alien, but into what it had always been meant to become. The barriers between the material world and the realm of spirit dissolved entirely. Death itself was transformed, not abolished, for that would have been contrary to the music's design, but changed into a gentle transition from one form of existence to another. Those who died would join the eternal song, while new souls would be born to take up the melody in the physical world. In Rivendell, Elrond's sons felt their father's presence, though he had sailed west years before. The Undying Lands and Middle-earth were becoming one realm again, as they had been before the world was chained. In the Shire, the hobbits found that their gardens grew not just the flowers and vegetables they had planted, but also the Malorn trees and Eleanor blossoms that had once been found only in Lothlorien. The peoples of Middle-earth, meanwhile, found that the artificial divisions between the kindred were melting away. Men and elves intermarried freely without the elven spouse having to choose between love and immortality. Dwarves and elves discovered that their ancient enmities had been based on misunderstandings that were impossible to maintain when both races could perceive each other's true nature. In the crystal chamber beneath Weathertop, the nine singers felt themselves becoming one with the Ainulindale itself. They were no longer separate beings who happened to be making music, but living embodiments of the themes they sang. Yet, paradoxically, this union enhanced rather than diminished their individual personality. Morwen found that becoming the voice of growing things made her more herself than she had ever been. The ranger who had loved the wild places of Middle-earth now became the spirit that would ensure those places remained forever wild and beautiful. Thorin discovered that his dwarven love of stone and mountain was amplified into a cosmic responsibility for the very bones of the earth. And Sam, who had begun as a simple gardener, found himself becoming the master gardener of all Arda, not its ruler, but its tender, ensuring that every part of the great garden would flourish according to its nature. As the last prophecy reached its culmination, Melkor spoke one final word, not in any language of Middle-earth, but in the pure speech of the Ainur that was music itself. It was a word of completion, of redemption, of harmony achieved through the resolution of even the greatest discord. "It is finished," he said, as his voice faded into the eternal music. "The work my father began in the timeless halls is complete. Arda is whole." The chamber of crystal dissolved around them, but they did not fall into darkness. Instead, they found themselves standing in a garden that was all of Middle-earth and more, a realm where every good thing that had ever grown, or been built, or been dreamed, had found its perfect expression. The Shire was there, but also Numenor redeemed, the two trees of Valinor, and the halls of Khazad-dûm in their glory. And in this garden that was all places and no place, they took up their eternal watch, 9 guardians whose voices would forever sing in harmony, ensuring that the peace they had won would endure until the music itself should pass into whatever lies beyond even Eru's knowledge. In the upper world, the transformed Middle-earth bloomed in splendor that would have no end. The prophecy was fulfilled, the music was complete, and the world had become what it was always meant to be, a realm where the children of Ilúvatar could dwell in harmony with each other and with the song that underlies all existence. And in the gardens and halls and wild places of this renewed earth, the peoples sang new song, lays of the 9 heroes who had given themselves to save their world, tales of the last prophecy that had made all things new, and above all, music that celebrated the truth they had learned, that even the greatest discord can be woven into beauty when love guides the song.